I identify as Wewoka. I'm a father, grandfather, brother. The Indigenous is just who I am. I don't really think about it. It's just how I was brought up with a lot of spirituality, a lot of native teaching, things like that. But being Indigenous to me, I guess I would say, is just trying to be in harmony, I guess, with the world, with everything around us. Try to leave this place better than we found it. It means a lot. I don't really pick things apart to try to identify as it because it's just part of who I am. Even my name, I just am Indigenous. Wewoka, that's a native name right there. So everything that I was brought up is Indigenous. Personally, I don't really think of myself as American at all. Obviously, I live within the United States, but being from Onondaga, it's a sovereign nation. And because of this country's history with Native people, I don't really think of myself as American too much. I do have a Social Security card, things like that. So when it comes down to technicalities, I am American, but I was raised very traditional in the longhouse, and the majority of my belief is just that I'm native. I'm Haudenosaunee, and only when it comes down to things like when I went to college, I had to sign up for selective service in order to get financial aid. I had to get a Social Security card, but other than that, I pretty much just feel I'm more indigenous, more native than American because of me working an overnight shift for the last probably 15 years. I haven't been as involved as I used to be when I was younger, but I would say attending ceremonies, talking with the elders, with my visiting my mom helps me a lot to try to stay connected because she always brings up, our teachings and reminds me how we're supposed to be conducting ourselves in this world. Personally, things I like to do to stay spiritual is to go out into the woods and to just reflect on how my life is and what's going on because we are part of nature. So it's the best place to stay grounded and to ground myself when I'm starting to feel like I'm not that connected. Things like smudging, that obviously helps. Daily affirmations and things like that of my teachings that I grew up with, whether it be singing our songs. A lot of the thing I do mostly is play lacrosse, and I know that's a sport, but it helps me to let go of all of my frustrations, all my worries, and just focus on what I'm doing at the time. And lacrosse started out as a medicine game for us, so it means more than just going out there and playing for me. It's a deep rooting. It brings me back to our creation and being alive and how everything is supposed to be in harmony with one another. So even though I'm going out there and having a rough game or it always brings me back to, my roots. It makes me feel connected. Living off the res, I'd say the main thing that makes me feel unconnected is what I said before about not being able to attend as many ceremonies on the res because I'm busy working or, you know, for me, living on the res isn't really permanent because my mother's not Onondaga, and by their ways, I can't own property on the res there anyway. So I would have had to move. I'm still participating in ceremonies and things like that, but there's limitations to what I can do down there. I cannot hold a title as far as chief or anything like that. I can be a participant and I can be a community member. But growing up, I always knew that my being there was, somewhat limited. There's not much land and space there. So I always pretty much planned on being off the res eventually anyway, one day. So it's just, how it is. but I can always go back, and I always know that I can go back. Onondaga is very traditional and very culture oriented. So, like I said before, just living in this world and figuring things out and how to be a good father and how to be a good steward of the land, as they say, and not being conscious of the things that you do on a day to day basis. So it's very, I grew up with a culture class in my school. We had language class in school. We learned about our traditions. We went to ceremonies, things like that at a young age. My family is very spiritual and very traditional. So I always just feel like, that's part of me, whether I'm there or not. I'm a deputy sheriff and I work in a correctional setting in a jail. That has its challenges, but one thing that I'm able to do is use my teachings. And like I said about being one with everybody and treating everybody fairly, and that's the way that I was brought up. So I treat them just like I would treat anybody else. I'm there to make sure that they're safe, that they're not injuring anybody, themselves or anybody else. And then I'm not there to make their sentence or their time in jail any worse than it already is. They've been sentenced to serve time in jail, and I'm just there to make sure that that time that they're there, that they are treated with compassion and making sure that their what rights they do have are met. One of the reasons I didn't go into being a police officer, I'll just go on a side note, is that I knew that being traditional, being a native, would be more conflicting, and it would have made it more difficult because being so close to the reservation, I would have had to respond to calls that dealt with things that happen on the res because the reservation here does not have a police office. So that meant I would have to deal with both the reservation and my job, and there's certain conflicts that would arise from that I just didn't feel I wanted to even put myself and get involved with. It has its moments, it has its conflicts. I've had people tell me I shouldn't be doing that are from the nation. Being that the history of, again, the way our people have been treated in the past, a lot of people don't think I should be doing what I am doing, but it was a good and steady way for me to take care of my family. And like I said, I try to treat everybody decent, and it's just a 9 to 5 like any other job out there, as far as I'm concerned. I want people to realize that the way that we're living is eventually going to destroy this world. And I don't say that to be dramatic, but we just consume more than Mother Earth can provide. And eventually we're going to use everything up, all our natural resources and things of that nature. So we try to convey the message to everybody that, we need to take care of this earth because we are just a small part of it. And we can't survive without it. We can't survive without the earth, without the oxygen, without the natural resources with water. And one thing that it's not a misconception, but one thing that we really do have to realize is that eventually it's not going to sustain us anymore. And it's not going to be tomorrow, but it is going to happen. And if we don't start taking care of things now and reversing, the effects that we are causing more damage than good at this point, and it is a real issue. It's something that as native people we were always taught to take care of the land, to not take too many foods out of the ground, to leave some for the next person, things like that. And in today's world, that doesn't happen very often, and we just keep trying to consume more and consume more, and eventually we're going to run out of everything. So I just want everybody to realize something my grandmother has always said is that we need to be stewards of the land and take care of it because we're only a small part of it. We're not the ruling or the controlling force.